allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our favorite part, recognition.
Yeah, I didn't know if the families and students could overhear. The board is excited to see you all. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. So our district mission is to grow learners, cultivate leaders, and create legacies. And tonight we get to celebrate some of our youngest leaders in the district. So we have students from the elementary school who went to the Connecticut Association of Schools Leadership Conference. And we also have some elementary students who were recognized by CAS for exceptional performance in the arts. So this young group of leaders is going to come up with Mrs. Scorso and give a small presentation about their experience. So we're going to welcome Rowan, Sage, Thomas, Levi, Hazel, Ruby, and Heyman. Thanks for being here tonight.
So our leadership, we have our leadership students here today, and we have our art students here today too. Our leadership students were able to go with Mrs. Olson, and raise your hand if you're one of our leadership students. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so they're gonna be able to talk a little bit more about some of the projects that they did at the conference. They had like mini workshops that I gave them a little bit more experience. I know that Levi and maybe Rowan wanted to, no, not for today? Okay, I understand. Okay, Levi, can you share one activity that you did at the conference?
One we did is problem solving, and we had like 5 things we had to like survive on an island with, and we all came up to like we all let everybody like have a turn to like talk and all of that and like that.
Levi, did you work with Lebanon elementary schools?
No, like all the other classes that were there.
So from schools from all
Yeah.
across the state, right?
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to share any other activities? Ruby? Did you say? Okay. All right, raise your hand if you are one of our art students. We have Hammond and Hazel, and they just went to the Arts Festival this past week. So we have Hammond, who was recognized for the visual arts, and we have Hazel, who plays the clarinet and is part of our chorus too. So congratulations to our elementary students, our future leaders. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, I want to ask questions.
Sure. Oh, you have questions. All right.
Seeing them in action at the elementary school. What was your favorite part about the conference?
I don't know. I mean, everything was fun, but I think the funnest was when the rock band, the Cool Cats, played.
Anybody else have a favorite part from their time at the leadership conference or the arts conference?
In the first one I did, the problem solving and that, yeah, that one was fun.
Anybody else? All right, congratulations. So I have a certificate for you, and Mrs. Scorso is going to take a picture of you out in the atrium. And families, thank you again for coming. And after you take your picture, please have a good night.
Right along, application letter of retirement.
All right, so we have a letter of retirement from Keo Narita. Keo is a longtime science teacher here at the high school. He'll be retiring at the conclusion of this school year and says that it's been a true privilege to teach in Lebanon. And while he looks forward to the next chapter, he's grateful for the time he has spent in the district. We also have a letter of resignation from Scott Elliott, who has been our athletic director and physical education teacher here at the high school. So Scott says, after a considerable amount of reflection and meaningful deliberation, he's formally submitting his resignation from the 2 positions aforementioned. He says it wasn't easy, as his time serving the community has been among the most meaningful and rewarding experiences of his professional life. He also said it's a privilege to work alongside exceptional faculty and staff who are dedicated to students in every day, and he's especially grateful for the relationships built with the student athletes and their families. The memories, connections, and shared accomplishments during my tenure will always hold a special place in his heart, he says. So thank you to Keo and Scott for their many years of dedicated service in Lebanon Public Schools, and best of luck to them both in their next chapter. The last thing we have is a letter of resignation from one of our Board of Ed members, John Okanok, on February 2nd of 2026, resigned from his position on the board.
Thank you. All the resignation retirements are not necessarily the end of the school year.
No, good point. So our retirement is effective the end of the school year. The resignation, I have worked with the cooperating superintendent from another district, and Mr. Elliott will be released from his services here in the next few weeks.
Thank you very much. Public participation. In accordance with Board Bylaws 9011, we invite public participation. We have allotted a total of 30 minutes. Each community member is allowed 2 minutes. Is there any member of the community who would like to make a public comment? Seeing none, we'll move right along to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Nicole, seconded by Brian. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. The student representatives were released for this evening, so we will look forward to their report next month.
Yeah, so we did have a report of some tricky weather that would potentially be happening around this time. So we reached out to the student reps and informed them that they did not need to come. Was also in line with the fact that we had canceled after-school activities. So if we didn't have other students out, we felt it was best for them to stay home and be safe.
Reports of committees. Just as a reminder, board policy, the bylaws of the board 9001 states that at a November meeting, all committee memberships shall be dissolved and memberships in committees shall be made by the chairperson. And what has been our practice is to pass out those papers to get preferences. And then I, as chair, kind of put together, try to go with preferences, check with the rest of the governance committee, and that's how the assignments are made. This year we've had a couple of board members who have indicated that they will not serve on subcommittees. So that just leaves us with a little bit more load. And as you know, now that John has resigned, we will see there might be some more shift in subcommittees. So, we'll go around the table. Carrie, superintendent evaluation.
We met with the Superintendent Gonzalez a couple weeks ago, and we will recap that later in this meeting.
Thank you. Nicole, facilities.
No report.
Okay. Brian, safety and security.
Safety and security, we met tonight as our first meeting of the new board and new committees, and had some great discussion in executive session.
Brian and Rachel, school building renovation committee.
So we met on the 3rd. We discussed the walkthrough that happened on that happened on the 9th.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
in
January
January.
9th.
That was in
Yeah.
January, Rachel. She had a whole McNutty about dates.
I wrote January 3rd too. We met on February 3rd. We had a walkthrough on the 9th. We just did Lyman. We just had a discussion of everyone, the committee's thoughts over that walkthrough. We have another walkthrough planned on the 20th. We're gonna start at the middle school and then move over to the elementary school, starting at 1:30. And we have a planned meeting coming up next week with our owner's rep. He will have we have asked him to bring his thoughts or presentation, his feedback from the Lyman walkthrough, and then we've asked him to also give us a report on non-priority items at LES and LMS, such as the HVAC system, so we can see if we're going to push that forward a little sooner than planned, considering all the issues they've been having with that at the schools, at both schools.
So 1:30, February 20th, starting at LMS, going to LES after that.
We're gonna start on the outside, and then hopefully the kids will be dismissed and we'll move inside, and then hop over to LES after they're dismissed. Our next meeting is next Thursday at, Tuesday at 5 p.m. We did have to move it. I think it was listed at 5:30, but there's a selectmen's has
We'll end up doing a special
prior
meeting.
engagement that we had to
Gotcha.
adjust our time.
So will you plan, Nicole, a subcommittee at the same time?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Any questions? Anything to add? Rachel, finance.
So we met a couple weeks ago, and we met tonight. A couple weeks ago, we went over the proposed operating budget, and we all agreed to the amount of, you're gonna have a presentation on it today, and it will be an action item today. But it's like 3.6. What's the rest of it? Sorry.
664.
664, thank you, 3.664. We did find out that the insurance rate is gonna be a little less than we were earmarking, which was good news, that allowed us to drop that budget a little more. And then this evening, we just had, and we went over the presentation as well at the last meeting, and this evening, we just went over, we just had it earmarked in case there was additional changes. There was not, so we just kind of, our thoughts about the presentation, budget, and we will have action items this evening on it.
Thank you. Tonight, strategic plan and school committee.
We met tonight for an hour. We had an ELA book proposal for the new core science fiction that was approved last meeting, and the book is Jurassic Park. It will be on display at the Jonathan Turnbull Library for 30 weeks, as is board policy. We also,
Be an agenda item, action item next month.
if the
Gotcha.
in that same part of the meeting, we also talked about, of course, at the beginning of a very rough draft. Next part of the mid-year data presentation is accessible. Most of you were there anyway. We also heard some of the DESA results, which has to do with social emotional status of the kids. And we had finally a quick ELA survey results regarding the high school courses. And the reason this survey was done by the teachers was because when the students did a survey, it only had a very small set of participants. And so this one had 150 participants in it. And they gave us the report. We didn't have a whole lot of time to talk about it or look at it because it was the end of it, but I look forward to reading it.
And the presentation, the 22-page presentation, was in Friday email. So if anybody is
Friday,
looking for that again, it's up. Thank you. Elizabeth, negotiations.
No report. Committee hasn't met.
And Elizabeth, policy.
That subcommittee met tonight. Andy reviewed policies with technical revisions, 5 policies set for first reading and 1 policy for second reading.
Thank you. EastCon remains vacant, and I don't have anything from governance. Okay. The administrators were also released for the evening, but they're, as you saw in the board packet, their reports start on page 23, and then Dawn's came in a separate email as well. Report of the superintendent.
All right, so the first one is a standing agenda item on town surplus projects. So today we actually had a walkthrough for the camera work that was approved to be done with town surplus funds. John had the pleasure of taking 18 vendors around on a walkthrough. Bids for this project will be due February 24th at 3 p.m. with a public opening that same day at 3:15. We plan to move forward with that award on March 10th. Simultaneously, the RFPs for the parking lots are also out. The walkthrough for those, for that project will be the 17th of March. Proposals will be due the 31st, and the opening will be later that same afternoon. And then we would hope to bring that award forward in April. Any question about town surplus?
The parking lot, are we doing the driveway as well, or just the parking lot?
Yeah, the driveway as well.
All of Blacktop?
Yep.
Can I just ask, because I zoned out, what was the first 18 vendors?
That was for the camera.
Cameras, okay.
Camera work. Yep.
Okay.
All right, no questions. We'll move on to the budget presentation. So, just to remind the full board, I know Rachel touched on it a little bit. We've had numerous finance subcommittee meetings to help build this budget. Tonight, I'll be bringing you the superintendent proposal, and if you so choose, you will, during your action item, adopt this, and it will become the Board of Education budget. I've shared this presentation with you in advance because it is lengthy, and I hope to streamline the presentation to hit on some key points. And then tonight, afterwards, we will have opportunity for question and comment during the action item portion of the board meeting. So these first couple slides, just thank you for your support and identify you as contributing members of this budget. Reminds everybody that we do have a specific Board of Education goal around preparing a fiscally responsible budget that balances our own objectives here in the district with the needs of our community. This is a piece of legislation that I do like to have on here as a reminder for you as Board of Education members, but also for members of our community to know that when you're on the Board of Ed, specifically as it relates to budget development, you should be looking to adopt a budget that is appropriate for our learning environment, which includes adequate books, supplies, materials, equipment, staffing, facilities, and technology, attempting to be equitable with resource allocation amongst the schools, ensuring that we have proper facilities maintenance and a safe school setting. Throughout the presentation, with all of the data and the celebrations and areas that we're looking to grow, it all comes back to our district mission of growing learners, cultivating leaders, and creating legacies. The next few slides are slides, although it's a budget presentation, I think it's very important for you to see again. I know you're familiar with a lot of these data points, but I think it's important for our Board of Finance and our community to see what we're doing with the budgets that we've been provided. So I do have several slides that highlight district academic celebrations. These in particular have to do with the State Department Accountability Index, and that refers to our performance on standardized tests. Also, this year has been a big year in terms of our accreditation. We have NIAC accreditation, which is for early elementary education, and NEASC accreditation, which is for the high school, both of which are up for re-accreditation this year. So Mrs. Scorso has worked really hard with her team and has submitted that paperwork. The NEASC accreditation visit will be in the upcoming months. I'm not going to go into all of those things, but they are considered to be the gold standard for early childhood education and high school education, and we look forward to getting positive news about our accreditation status. Something else that's infused into this presentation is around industry recognized credentials that the state has come out with, and how we at Lyman in particular are working towards those. Specifically, the welding pathway is something that we really highlight in this presentation. I also have included some effective practices that are in place at the elementary, middle, and high school, things that have been worked on with all of our teams and are part of our professional learning for our staff and our students. And again, just kind of recapping with our strategic plan goals. As I told you throughout this presentation, everything comes back to our vision and mission. All right, now we start to get really into the budget data. These have been the superintendent budget priorities every year that I've presented, and I will keep them here. I think it's very important to have consistency with these priorities, and it's something that I strive for every time I'm putting a presentation together. First and foremost is transparency and trust. I want to put everything that I have for available data out for you all to see and out for our community. But it's going to be a goal of mine and a duty that I think I have as a superintendent of Lebanon Public Schools to provide the best for our learners and our staff and continue to strive for excellence in all we do. So here's a breakdown of our historical town approved budgets. You can see that over the past 6 years, we've had a distinct increase year over year. Back in 2021, those were coming out of COVID years, and then we had some real work to do to get caught up with facilities and maintenance, to adopt new and different curriculum resources, and also in those numbers, there were significant increases to insurance rates. But I have made a real effort to do what I can to always bring you what I consider to be a fiscally responsible budget. But I also realize that we can't have increases year over year. We have to be looking for an opportunity to not have an increase. And this year, we were able to have a number that is lower than what has been approved in the last 3 years. So this year, our superintendent proposed percentage increase is 3.664. And I'll get into the breakdown of how that happened this year. I did have a slide here to highlight the insurance increases that we've experienced that played a big part in these budget increases year over year. And this slide has a lot of information and can be a little bit confusing, but again, it just goes to show you how two particular drivers impact the overall projection. And I'm just going to focus on this top one because it speaks to the current budget that we're in. We had a 5% that was approved by our town, and of that 5% increase, 2.64% was made up just of special education increases that we are required legally to abide by, and district health insurance. This year, that same information that's presented on that chart accounts for 1.9% of the 3.6. Special education costs and insurance rate increase. One of the things that came up during Board of Finance presentation in particular was the impact on inflation and cost of living for our community members, our taxpayers. And I totally agree and understand that perspective. But in this presentation, I try to highlight that inflation and cost of living has an impact on school budgets too. I'm not going to go into every explanation and connection, but that was there for your review, and I will bring that to the Board of Finance's attention and the town's attention when making those presentations. I did try to break it down and put it into a graphic form as well. On the left of this chart here, on the left of those slashes, is what the cost of living increases were in these years. And on the right is what our budget increases were year over year. And if you look at the cost of living 5-year average of 4.62, our budget increase in that same 5-year time period was 3.64. I tried to take cost of living on the top left, also highlight insurance increases on the top right, and then bring that all into context with our contractual increases for salaries, because that is something else that's been a topic of conversation at the Board of Finance level and at the town level, is how much our staff is making and what their increases have been. And obviously, they are impacted by inflation and cost of living too. And I think that the contracts that have been negotiated and the rates of pay for our staff are very reasonable. I could not look at that chart and say that anyone is receiving increases or raises that are outrageous in comparison to what they're having to deal with cost of living and insurance increases as well. I did the same type of chart for inflation and then kind of put that into a line graph here for you to see, the yellow being inflation over the years and the red being the budget increases. This is a Lebanon Public Schools budget presentation, and that's where my mind and focus is, and I know that's what we all will ultimately be voting on, but I do think it's good information for you to know what's happening around us. So the towns at the top of this list with the E next to them are towns that are considered to be what our district reference group. So they are similar in size, population, demographics, etc. That's the number that they've brought to their Board of Education. Basra is a little bit more of a unique situation as compared to us because they are a one school district. So that number is very respectable for them, but that number can fluctuate greatly dependent on certain variables because of their small population. Westbrook and Coventry both have a 3-school model like us. Then the other ones on that list are schools and districts that are not in our district reference group but are close to us in location and or size, and you can see that each one of those are significantly above the proposal that I'm sharing with you tonight. So some areas that were examined or realized for savings in this year's budget. So we did have a significant number of staff that resigned or retired that were at a higher step than what their replacement was. So there's a chart later on where I'll highlight the total number of staff, which is also down, and that played a significant part in our percentage coming in lower. We did try to get creative and partner with universities to employ interns that would have otherwise been paraeducators primarily or tutors, and that has been a significant savings. I, right from the get-go, have told our administrative team this needs to be a needs-based budget. Please do not bring anything that you do not need for your staff and for your students. They responded as such, and that's why our starting point this year was so much lower than it had been maybe in some other years where I promoted them to bring forward their wishes or their hopes and dreams. This was not a year I felt we should even start with that approach. And then because of the insurance increases, unfortunately, many of our staff members have decided to decline insurance through the school. They're taking insurance with their significant other or finding other means. And just because we have less staff that the district is paying a premium for, our number in terms of total cost of insurance went down for us. We're also not offering an early retirement incentive plan. That is something that was offered 3 years ago as a way to try to find savings. So we were still paying for some staff members insurance benefit wise. We are no longer doing that. That's a savings of $81,000. I do want to highlight if those staff members were still here and we were paying their salary and benefits, it would be over $500,000. So while the VERUP does cost money to execute, it is a big savings over the actual cost of those staff members still being part of our team. Here's a breakdown of our overall budget in terms of dollars and percentages. You can clearly see that employee salaries and benefits is the biggest driver in our budget, but contractual fixed costs and services and transportation also are big drivers, and you can see that even better here in this pie chart. This shows the increase or decrease from 25-26 to this proposal by category. And then what we did here in this chart is take this same information and spike it out by separating health insurance from the employee salaries. So here, when you're looking at salary and benefits, this includes the contractual increases in terms of pay and the health insurance. That's what this does. But then in this one, it spikes it out to show you that the health insurance is actually the big driver within that driver. These next slides I'm not going to spend too much time on at all, but this goes back to those superintendent priorities and trying to be transparent. I take the category of working closely alongside Martha, and I try to provide every single piece of data that goes into building the salary and benefits, transportation, operations, etc. District staff report, I mentioned that a key driver in realizing savings in this year's budget proposal was staff that had retired or resigned. We also did not bring back all of those positions. So there were some cases that staff retired and we hired for that position and just brought in a lower step staff member or maybe at least less experienced staff member. But there were also positions that did not get filled. I also want to be transparent that changed from 112.5 full-time equivalent staff members in the certified teaching row down to 108.9. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a full less person. So I don't want you to look at that and say, oh, we have roughly 4 less teachers. There were some positions that there's a staff member here, but they're teaching 0.6 instead of 1.0. You remember we had some of those difficult deliberations last year with some positions, and we decided not to have them be full-time equivalent. They're teaching part-time. Enrollment, these are the same slides that were here from last year's presentation. Just as a reminder to everybody, these came directly from the school study. But we do have a policy and goal on class size that we've tried to stick to. And these projections are, like I said, from the school study. Special education services, these are also some data points that were shared last year, I think, to build our own knowledge base, but make sure that the community is also aware that the landscape for special education has dramatically shifted over the past few years, and that many local education expenses are dedicating 20 to 30% of their overall budget to special education. We talked about maintenance of effort. When I showed you that slide very early on, that were things that I said were kind of out of our control. We receive federal funding for special education, and we cannot decrease those services except for a few allowable rules, which are outlined here. So this slide, I think, is very important to see. We talked about that changing landscape. The number of special education students that we have in our district is up roughly 30 in the last 5 or 6 years. And I know that we've talked about declining overall enrollment, but the enrollment in terms of our special education students is actually increasing and has increased significantly. This middle row here with this highlighted arrow I think is also important, because back in 2020, 2021, with 153 special education students, we had 19 students who were outplaced because we did not have the programming or ability to service them the way they needed in district. Over this past 5 years, we have built in-district programming to better meet the needs of all of our learners in our community. So now we're only having 11 students outplaced. So we're able to meet our learners' needs in a better fashion. And there is a significant savings to that. So you can see that our tuition for outplacement students and our transportation for outplacement students are listed here. And we are $500,000 less than what we used to be because of our in-district programming. Transportation, those rates have significantly increased, similar to insurance. So even with less kids outplaced, the transportation cost is actually more.
And Andy, if I could just real quick, it's important to note too that 2021 and forward, those were on those years' dollars. So they haven't been escalated, and they'd be that, in other words, the variance that you're describing would be even greater based on the escalation.
Yeah, so the outplacement tuition rates are higher than what they were in 2020, 21, without a doubt. This one is probably the most eye-opening chart in the whole presentation. So with our in-district programs, let's imagine a time where we did not have them, so not too long ago, and we would then have to outplace those students that are in those programs. With the current average tuition rates for outplacements and the current transportation rates, we would be looking at an increase to our budget of over $3 million, which would be about 12% just by our in-district programs. That slide about 4 or 5 slides ago where I talked about the proportion of special education costs in local budgets being between 20 and 30%. Ours is 20, almost 21% of our total budget is dedicated to special education costs. This one is one that I know has come up at town meeting several times. It's regarding tuition revenue. So this is a hypothetical, very hypothetical situation. But if there was some mechanism within our town, and I will acknowledge that there's not many towns that there is this theoretical mechanism, but it could be done according to legislation and charter, and it's something that might be considered in the future. If we were able to use all of the tuition revenue that we generate towards our Board of Education budget, our ask would actually be negative. With all of that money, we would not really even be looking to have an increase. Here's some historical data for our tuition revenue. Every year for the last 3 years, we've been well over $1.5 million in tuition revenue. Here's a breakdown of where all of our students come from that are from sending districts, either into our ASTE or into our high school as a sending school because their district does not have a high school. This goes way back to 2015 when we only had, we had 63, which is a good number, but in comparison to what we've had these last 3 years, we had 3 years ago 116 students from sending districts, and just this year we have 100. So the final breakdown of the budget increase, salary, benefits, other contractual fixed costs make up 2.71 of that 3.664, and less than 1% of our overall increase has to do with instructional supplies, technology, equipment, and student-based activities. And, you know, I highlight, because that's even surprising to me after being a longtime educator, that out of 100% of our budget, such a small amount goes to what you would consider to be some key things in an educational system. So once again, my proposed budget for on the operating side would be a 3.664. I also know that there is this looming kind of school study and building renovation plan that is still being worked out. So that is something that has been top of mind when putting this presentation together and considering what we'll be doing in the near future. We are in a unique place where we can't just completely pause our operations and not make staffing or program or facility enhancements. We still need to try to move those things forward, but also knowing, you know, that our hope in the near future is that we will be able to do some of these things that came out of the school study. I also dedicated a lot of time to trying to show you and our Board of Finance and community that we are always actively looking for ways to offset our operating costs by using grants. So Martha has given me a figure that I'm sharing with you. $1.4 million worth of grant funding comes into helping our schools provide what we need for our staff and students. And then I give some examples of what these grants make possible in our district and how we use those grants in our district. So I'm not gonna go over those, they're all there for you to see. Town surplus is also something that's been on everybody's mind and has been something that we are extremely grateful that we have the opportunity to do some of these projects. But it's also something I want to highlight. I do feel maybe a little bit more sensitive than I should, that the Board of Education budget is really critically looked at and analyzed how we're spending and, you know, what our surplus numbers might be. So our BOE surpluses have never been more than 0.6 of a percentage point at the end of the year. I think that speaks to how closely we're monitoring our spending and how we're being good stewards of the budget. And then on the town side, there's been multiple years where there's been over $1 million in surplus. And I do understand that there's a lot of factors in that, but I do think it's worth taking a critical look at that side of it as well. Here's a list of things that we have been able to do with that town surplus. Again, very grateful that the boards and our community has voted to give us these opportunities, because otherwise these things may not have been done. So here's the 26-27 capital account request. 127,000 in information technology, 210,000 in facilities, and 63,000 in athletics. All of these lists have been brought to our Board of Education, have already been approved, and detailed the projects for you on those lists. And these, again, is just historical snapshots. You can see that in IT, facilities, and athletics, that our requested amounts have not traditionally been what we have been approved. And what I like to point out is that these projects don't go away. You know, they're still out there, and if we don't have the funding that we need to complete them, it just kind of compounds year over year. We have put a really nice dent in this list of projects that we've had because of town surplus, but we are looking to have our capital requests fully funded as requested, so that we can do the projects that we feel are necessary in our district. So I know that's a lot. I went at a very fast pace, but again, this presentation has been shared multiple times with the Board of Ed Finance Subcommittee. It's been shared with you in advance, and I look forward to conversation or question during our action item later this evening. Thank you.
Move on to the finance report.
So Martha has provided the finance report for the month in your packet. There's really not much to highlight other than what she has included at the bottom of her last page of the January update. We are above our historical comparison for this time of year using a 5-year average. We still have 41% of our operating left, versus at this time over the past 5 years, we're right around 38-39%. So I think we're in good shape. There haven't really been any surprises that I feel I would need to bring to the board that have us concerned with possibly being in a deficit, which is nice. The key drivers, though, as we've always identified, is special education. Outplacement and transportations that are unplanned can significantly swing our budget one way or the other. So we're monitoring that closely. The other thing that is something to bring to your attention, extreme cold weather. I know we've all been thrilled to be living through it together, but we're monitoring our heating oil and our electricity costs because of that. Any questions about our standing with our operating budget?
When does the fiscal year, when does the budget go from?
It goes from July 1 to June 30.
How much is in non-lapsing, Andy?
Yep, so non-lapsing project balance including the in-progress projects, is just over 19,000. We have had some mechanical issues that have required some emergency repair. If you look back at that list, you know, the last three things that we brought to your attention have all been emergency repairs: fire pump, ERV units. Then into facilities, I did have conversations with Mr. Jarvis today and Mr. Dulock about the remaining balances there. There are more funds in facilities than in IT. Jacques is at a point where, you know, we're kind of just holding firm on that little that he has remaining in case there's any type of emergency there. But he's done a really nice job of getting what we need for our students and our staff in terms of technology. And John has some quotes and things lined up for a few of the projects on the facilities tracking list. And then one of them, the tennis court repairs, we're really at the mercy of the weather. We have to wait for all this snow and ice to clear, and then we can look at what repairs might be needed there again. Athletics, we are in a little bit of a holding pattern with our athletic director resigning. I've talked with John and Martha about some of the projects that, you know, John has been traditionally involved in that might carry over from facilities into athletics, and how we can work together to monitor that while we're going to be looking for a new athletic director. That being said, Mr. Elliott has been great about transition planning and putting things in place, but some of these projects will be after he's gone.
Any other questions for Andy on the finance report?
So Andy, there's 50 students, so there's 929 this year, and it was 953 last year?
For enrollment,
Yeah.
yeah, so right now we're at 927 actually, and in June of last year we were at 953. But if you look at September of this year, we were at 928. So our enrollment during the year does fluctuate a little bit up and down. We have some move in, some moves out, but it's pretty much stayed the same since the start of the year. That is a contributing because we had a larger senior class graduate than we did have an incoming group.
Any other questions for Andy on the finance report? Seeing none, we'll move on to action items. The first action item is to act on the letter of resignation. Is there a motion?
Motion to act on the letter of resignation with regret.
That's up to you. Motion by Nicole, seconded by Brian. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Number 2, act on the letter of retirement. Is there a motion?
Motion to act on the letter of retirement.
Motion by Nicole, seconded by Janelle. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Act on the second reading of policy 5028, high school graduation requirements. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that
It doesn't have to be.
we move forward with, on the second reading of policy 5028 and approve.
Second.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Nicole. Any discussion? Andy?
Just as a reminder for the full board, this had been brought for first reading, but some minor technical edits were needed. Specifically, we wanted to outline and make the math work so that the total number of credits was clearly stated on the policy. So we had to include the number of elective credits they needed. Now that's on there, so the math works.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. 4, act on the 2026-2027 operating budget.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2026-27 operating budget at a 3.664% increase.
Second.
Okay, motion by Rachel, seconded by Nicole. Discussion, please.
I have a question.
You know,
First of all, I know a ton of time goes into this, so I wasn't part of the process, so I just have a couple questions. The other professional technical services for 361,000, can you tell us what part of that is?
Yeah, so actually Martha and I anticipated that that might be a question. So in that other professional technical services, there's athletic officials, the athletic trainer, financial software system, paychecks, Horizon, which is the food service software, Go Guardian, which is how we monitor our students using their devices, Share, which is our district communication system, CEN, which is our internet provider, NEC, which is our cloud backup, and our frontline models for hiring and recruiting, professional growth and evaluation, absence management. All of that goes into other professional technical services. So there's been increases in all of those, not all the same, so I don't have like that complete breakdown, but that's.
I think that sounds like a deal, actually, for all of that you just listed. I had another question about the enrollment. It's page 50, the class size report. You said you got the data from SLAM.
Yes.
I don't really know how it helps the budget to show that.
Yeah, so.
Well, because partly, I don't agree with this study anymore. If you look at the last 3 years, what they predicted isn't happening. They're off by like 50 students. But regardless of that being right the last 3 years, I don't think it affects the kids we have right now. So you can talk about projection, but right now we have 927 students. So those are the kids we need to pay for and we need to teach and all of that. So it's kind of a note, I guess, that when I was going through it, I'm like, wait, why are we looking at this? They're not right anyway. The projections for the last 3 years weren't right. But anyway, we have to pay for the kids we have now. So
Yeah,
it's just an observation, I guess.
if I may, yeah, I think it's a great point. And what is presented to the Board of Finance and to the community can be different, and your feedback is totally taken into consideration, and I'll follow your lead. The reason why the enrollment and class size stuff has been there is because it has seemed to be a significant topic of conversation during the presentation, so I just wanted to be transparent and put it out there. But if you feel like we should shift gears, I can easily make that adjustment.
I think it's something that always does come up, even at the Board of Finance, but especially at the town meetings.
Perhaps, if I might, maybe Andy, in the past, we've moved stuff to backup data. That might be a great place for that. Danelle's point is well taken.
Yeah, I agree with Dell.
Just to clarify, you mean backup data versus not going to present it, but in case the question comes up, it's
there.
already.
Any other questions?
I do agree that we need to focus on what you said, today's enrollments
I mean,
and students.
if enrollment is declining drastically, that will affect the budget for next year, but it's not declining drastically, and it's also not increasing
Increasing,
drastically, so.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your hand. That is Carrie, Nicole, Brian, Dawn, Rachel, Danelle, and Elizabeth. All those opposed, please raise your hand. That is Carl. Motion passes. Next is anticipated executive session for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's mid-year evaluation. Is there a
Make a motion that we move into executive session for conversation with the superintendent.